Good evening. I'm John Batchelor. This is the John Batchelor Show. My professionals, John Fund of the National Review Online and David Drucker, Washington Examiner, join me, and we're going to focus on two big stories right now that move in and out of the conversation in Washington. Mr. Snowden and the NSA, and immigration. The immigration bill, the negotiations in the Senate, looking to the House. I begin with Mr. Fund, however, because before we plunge into the details of the former Vice President, Mr. Cheney's remarks on national television and the remarks of the President of the United States with regard to NSA, John, there is a general cloud over the scale of scandals now being investigated. The IRS, the criminalization of journalism, Benghazi, and now the NSA puzzlement. And the sudden announcement by Mr. Rhodes, the Deputy National Security Advisor, last Thursday, in what looks to be a complete change of direction for the Obama administration to arm or give armed assistance to the Syrian resistance. Question here is the Obama administration wagging the dog, or wagging the dog leash, however you want to turn the phrase? Do they know it? Do they mean to distract us with all of these fires? The rug is on fire everywhere, and they keep lighting new fires. Good evening to you, John.
Look, it's inexplicable to foreign policy professionals. There's a big new Brzezinski, Jimmy Carter's national security advisor, and obviously there were many foreign policy problems in the Carter administration. He was on Morning Joe saying, this is not what professionals do. And, I don't want to make parallels, but, Obama is heading towards a foreign policy record of incoherence and indecisiveness that would make Jimmy Carter look like a paragon of consistency. It may be to wag the dog. If it's the case, it's not going to work because it just looks pathetic, weak-kneed, and desperate. We'll
come back because I want to immediately go to Mr. Drucker. Good evening, David. Marco Rubio and the Q&A that you've published within these hours at the Washington Examiner, a very handsome news site. Your name looks good on it, David. Marco Rubio is the man everybody looks to in the United States Senate for the immigration bill, but these last days there have been contradictory remarks about whether Mr. Rubio would back his own bill. I thought that was pretty snarky. But where the process is, and David, I love process. Where are we? Is Rubio relaxed at this pace? Good evening to you.
Good evening, John. And I think it's still a little too early to tell exactly how the Senate process is going to unfold, and will it be run in a manner that at least has Republicans feeling as though it's the open, fair process they want or not? On Tuesday, we are going to have votes on 3 or 4 different amendments. They're going to be actual votes and not any attempt to table amendments. And so you're going to get your first real taste of action tomorrow. Look, I think Rubio all along has treated this as a step-by-step process, meaning, we're doing what we're doing today. It's not the only thing that needs to happen. Maybe it's going to work out, maybe it isn't. And, they've gotten this far, and now it's a matter of whether or not they can make improvements to the bill that creates the kind of space for Republicans to feel good enough about it to vote for it. So you have an outcome that's not just about 60 votes, but maybe about a little bit more. I think Rubio is very realistic about where the bill is at. I think he's realistic about its possibility, but he's trying for the outcome that he intended at the very beginning, and it's just a matter of if they'll get there.
The mood for Mr. Rubio, he is a, freshman legislator, and this is the first time taking a major piece of legislation. This would be a signature deal for any senior senator in Washington. Is he as confident now as he was when he started this process self-consciously 6 or 7 months ago?
Well, he appears to be. When I sat down with him towards the end of last week, he seemed at ease. He seemed pleased with where things were. I don't think he's had any illusion about what was possible with immigration reform. In other words, I don't think he saw this as some sort of cakewalk. I think how hard he's worked to make the sale to conservatives shows that this is not anything he thought would be easy. And, he's in it. He's definitely shown in his brief political career, at least national political career, that he's not afraid of a challenge that looks, like it might or might not happen. So, I think he's okay with where it is. He'd like to see it pass the Senate if he can get the changes that he wants. He keeps saying that the point isn't just to pass any bill, it's to pass a bill that he feels good about. And, the only way you get a chance to do that is to go through this process. It's really hard in the Senate to preordain, especially on a major issue like this. So I think he's doing everything possible to get the outcome he wants. It's just a matter of whether, the politics are going to work out in his favor.
Mr. Fund, I want to discuss Dick Cheney and the NSA in just a moment, but your thoughts, John, watching from the NRO, this process gives Republicans, and I talk to them routinely. I spoke to my friend Gene Countryman in Wichita yesterday. These are Kansas Republicans, John, right? Kansas Republicans. That's very red Republicans. A lot of anxiety about the immigration bill. Do you hear that from the party in general, John? They trust Rubio, but they're still anxious.
As the details of the bills are debated, I think you're going to see a lot more anxiety among the general population as it tunes in, and the president has a problem here. Ultimately, this is going to be in the end involving presidential leadership, but the new CNN poll shows that half the country now thinks the president is neither honest nor trustworthy because of all of these scandals. His approval rating has fallen to 44 or 45%. It's 37% among independents. Presidents at those approval numbers don't pass major pieces of legislation. George W. Bush saw Social Security go on the rocks even earlier than this in the process. I fear that unless President Obama can turn his approval numbers down, he will lack the credibility, the leadership qualities, and the trust of the American people. Remember, the president has proven he can eavesdrop on all Americans, but he has not proven the federal government can secure the border. People are still very skeptical about that.
Mr. Drucker, secure the border. That's exactly the language I heard from Kansas. Did Mr. Rubio say that he can answer that, or is that something to be answered in the House, David?
Well, it could work either way. I mean, I think in order to get the vote of Rubio and some other Republicans that are on the fence that want to vote for this but are skeptical, you're going to need to see some border security enhancements to the bill. He told me, without saying so, essentially, that's where things stand. So what he wants to see from a border security amendment, at least for him, at least at this point, is something. I think the main thrust here is an amendment that would change the existing bill from one that delegates the border security plan, whatever it may be, and the metrics for what determines border security, whatever those are, to the Department of Homeland Security under, whatever president may or may not be in office over the next few years and beyond 2016. I don't mean, until 2016, but after, because, you don't know who's going to win and who isn't. And instead, he wants Congress to detail, where's the fence, how big is the fence, how many cameras, how many sensors. In other words, he wants Congress to tell Homeland Security, this is the border security plan, and this is exactly how you're going to know if it's working or not. That's the kind of amendment he wants to his bill, and I think that he'd like to see other senators, other Republicans, either do it or do it as a group with him to create a sense of wider buy-in. But if he needs to do it himself, he's going to do it himself, and I know that it's already in the works, because this is not something you can pull out 10 days from now and say, okay, oh, by the way, here it is. I mean, you have to be developing it.
David Drucker for the Washington Examiner, John Fund for the National Review Online. When we come back, we'll turn immediately to the Vice President Dick Cheney's remarks about President Obama. He is extremely unhappy with the way the president has not commented on the NSA programs that Mr. Cheney is aware of. He wants the president to speak forcefully. It also speaks to the question whether the American people trust the President of the United States at this moment on any of these issues of surveillance, of privacy violations. Yes, I'm talking about the IRS. I'm John Batchelor. This is The John Batchelor Show.